because especially from my side, as a younger person, I think you want to go out and you want to change loads of things and you think you can just instantly make things better. And that is not possible. But the great thing about where I am in Bury is that we're in Greater Manchester and there's a lot of devolution, there's a lot of exciting things happening. The buses have just come back under public control. A lot of things that so personally, one of the things that I'm really interested in is veterans care. In Greater Manchester, we do a lot of that. We deliver a lot of that locally. So working with like the British Legion, but working with local GP practices, locality boards. So that ability to kind of shape things locally, I find really interesting, and we have done some of that. So in a way, I feel like I'm doing something that I'm interested in, and we're achieving things as well.
It's super exciting to return to the world of both local government and those that work behind the scenes in politics. And today we have a really good guest, and that is Councillor Gareth Staples Jones, who I first met in person at Labour Party conference. We finally met, didn't we, mate? How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. It has been a whole year, but I feel like I've aged 10 years since that first point. But yeah, I'm good. I'm energized. It's been a year. I don't know what else to say. It's just been crazy, really. I'm going to turn this phone off. Sorry, mate.
Oh, we'll go again. That's quite loud on me earbuds, so we'll go again.
I've got like 2 burner phones because I'm a wanted man. So
actually, you just prompted me here. Might make mine's off.
Sorry, that was my bad, mate.
It's all right, mate. We'll go again. We are back in the realms of local government and those that work behind the scenes of politics, which I always evangelise over. And we are with Councillor Gareth Staples Jones, who I first met at Labour Party conference about a year ago, though we've been chatting a long time before then. How are you, mate? How's it going? How's the last year been?
I'm good. Yeah, it's been a full year, hasn't it? It's been 12 months. I feel like I've aged an awful lot, and an awful lot has happened since then. But yeah, good. Weirdly tired, but also energized at the same time. I think that probably comes a little bit from my side on the red team, but it's learned an awful lot. Spoke to some great people. Just gutted we haven't done it sooner, but to be fair, you've had some pretty big people on that are way important compared to me. So I've just been enjoying listening to the podcast and keeping up with you.
Well, you're being too humble. It's good to get you on. And I always said, as I said to you before we came online, that it's important. This podcast always champions local government because that is the area where the armed forces community have so much to give, be that reservists, veterans, or spouses and partners as well. I really want to see people from the armed forces community stand up and serve again in communities. And you're doing that. So we're going to delve into that. Absolutely. But before we go into all of that, let's talk about a military connection, because that is the thing that unites us both, particularly in the reserve forces. I mean, why on earth did you join the reserve forces? And tell us a bit about that story so far.
So so just briefly, my background is only child, mum and dad. My mum had been in the TA previously. My granddad had been in the armed forces, and pretty much every generation before that had been a member of the army or in the armed forces at some point. And when I was younger, because I'm already quite young compared to most people, but when I was younger, when I was 15 and 9 months, I wanted to go and sign on and join the armed forces and just leave home. My mum and dad were very, very kind of, you need to go to college, go to university. I did that and kind of found that actually I didn't want to be a full-time member of the armed forces. I quite enjoyed having a life, doing things that weren't armed forces related, and then found that I could actually do the reserve stuff alongside that. So as at university, I did, I was really lucky. I did international contemporary history and politics, and in that was military history. And whilst I was doing that, I did the university's Royal Naval Unit, which is like the Navy version of the OTC, basically. But you got to travel more and drink a lot more. And my second year, I was lucky. I got to go to a place called Virginia Military Institute. So I was on exchange for this military college in Virginia between the US Navy and the Royal Navy. And that was absolutely fascinating. Did that, kind of came back from there, and very, very weirdly, started farming. So I had some sheep on about 50 acres that I was renting with my partner at the time. really enjoyed farming, but the Navy and farming don't really go hand in hand. So I joined the Army Reserves. I joined the originally it was the Yeomanry, Royal Yeomanry in Wigan, and then I joined the Fusiliers in Bury, and I'm still with them to this day. So that's kind of me and where I'm up to at the moment. But I always felt, and especially after doing my second year at the military college in America, they have this kind of idea of a citizen soldier. So the fact that you can be a reservist or in the National Guard and do your normal job and be twice the citizen, basically. And I find that fascinating because over here, especially with my mum's experiences in the TA, there was always this kind of dark cloud over the TA and reserves. I think that they were like somehow weekend warriors and, didn't count quite as much as the regular armed forces, which I think has changed a little bit.
And how did you find that culturally, the Americans, in terms of their perception of how they look at veterans and how they look at those, the National Guard you just spoke about as well? What's that difference been like since you've joined up yourself?
So the huge turning point for me was I went and stayed with a friend in DC. That friend uh, basically went to go on and join the Navy SEALs. Very humble guy, very nice guy. Stayed with his family in DC, and whilst I was there, we went to Bethesda Naval Hospital, which is near, I think it's in Maryland or near DC. Um, and that was insane. So I was in the gym there just doing some fizz, and there were amputees there. There were people being treated, and the facilities that they had for their treatment was insane. I mean, the whole hostel was geared towards veterans, but also the community outside of that. And that was just one. That was just one centre, and I felt like an absolute pipsqueak. I felt tiny. Also doing the training, not just the academic stuff, but the physical side of it. So I went to Norfolk Naval Station in Virginia as well, and that was just eye-opening to realize how small of a kind of club we are in the international, or in NATO, I suppose. But it makes you realize that really we're always working with our international partners. But the respect that they had for me being part of the British Armed Forces was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. But you realize that for whatever talk there is out on the kind of the street and in the civvy world, in the military, we know, I think, what we're expected to do, and we know the scale of what we can do, and we know that we need international partners. So having those relationships with people, seeing it for what it was in America, very eye-opening for me personally and in my military career.
Yeah, I think what you're alluding to there is that special relationship. I certainly experienced that during the Invictus Games, the bond that we had with the Americans to share a stage. When I got my medal, not that I like to talk about it much, but when I got my powerlifting medal, it was with two Americans, and the bond that we had physically. And you said about feeling a pipsqueak. I felt like a pipsqueak because when they slapped me and went, "Well done, bro," I thought they were going to break my arm. In that embrace. But in all seriousness, we have such a unique bond. And it sounds like that experience was quite formative for you, though, you mentioned individuals there. But for someone that's interested in both the military and politics to have had that experience, it must have been some kind of political geekery utopia going in DC as well. I mean, what was that experience like, the political side of it, in terms of your course and the interactions you had in the States?
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's kind of intertwined with the military, I think, because the political side of it is the decision making. There's a decision that's made, and at the end of the day, it's the armed forces that have to go and deliver that. So there's always politics involved. Some of the people that I met over there's a colonel. One of the lessons that I did was like amphibious warfare, basically, which was with the Marine Corps, and they're just beasts in themselves. They're crazy, lovely people. And the colonel that was in charge of that detachment, he'd been first Gulf War, second Gulf War, Afghanistan, and he would invite me in for tea, to have tea and dates with him every kind of Wednesday, and we would just talk the talk and have a general chit chat. I went to his wedding actually, and he had like an old kind of sword on the side, like a gold plated AK, like loads of kind of stuff that um, he'd rescued, shall we say, and just incredible people. But the people that they knew in DC and the people that they knew across America, fascinating. There was somebody there at one of the events that I went to, and his dad was the commanding officer of a nuclear aircraft carrier. Yeah, just the links as well. I must say. So when I went to DC a few times, one of the dinners that I had with somebody there, he was a defense advisor to Obama during his years. So having to being able to chat with people like this at the age that I was again fascinating, but very eye opening. And it's I think sometimes in the UK we forget maybe that the decision making that's behind some of the things that we go out and do. So whether that's our activities in Africa, in the Baltic states, etc., in Northern Ireland. There are reasons why we go and get asked to go and do these things, and we forget the people that go and make them don't always understand the military. Sometimes they might be the exact opposite. They might be experts in the military, but they've never been in the military. And it's two very different things. But having that interaction, meeting all these different people from kind of different caucuses and different groups was fascinating. The college that I went to, half of them were very southern, shall we say, kind of redneck, if you want to label it that way. And the other half were very metropolitan because their parents worked in DC, and they had that kind of more liberal side. So that was absolutely fascinating. I think at the time as well, when I was there, we had Trump being elected and Brexit as well. So it was very, very interesting politically. But yeah, I just enjoyed getting to meet all these different characters, basically.
It sounds to me had like this unfettered access to all of these different people, personalities, experience, different ideologies as well. And how old were you at the time?
This must have been so I graduated in 2018, so it's 2017. So not that long ago, but felt like a very long time ago. So I was still very young, 20, I think.
So 20
Uh,
years of age, with access to all of this experience, it just
yeah.
demonstrates the power of these kind of programs that are available and how that can shape an individual at a young age and set you up for life. And to have those mentors around those people to get invited to a wedding and things like that's simply amazing. I mean, what were the key takeaways that you learned from that experience that you've been able to pick up and take on into your reserve life or into your elected office life from that experience?
I genuinely think one of the biggest takeaways was like the individual relationships. So we had to get like a memorandum of understanding for me to go out and be on exchange with the US Navy Reserve, basically. And I think before this, my idea of like these international partnerships that we had, even within like the private sector and businesses, I kind of thought there was some slick method or kind of way that these were arranged. And actually, it's a group of individuals going meeting another group of individuals, forging a relationship, having a friendship, and something coming off the back of that. And actually, when you do have that relationship with people, whether that's in the Navy, in the Army, in the DoD or MOD, whatever it is, or in government, that relationship can be quite healthy and you can achieve a lot. It's when you don't invest that time into those relationships that things start to break down or perhaps aren't as productive as you might want them to be. So, investing time in individual relationships for me was a big learning curve. And because I had those two sets of people who were very, very different, being able to kind of listen to people that I didn't agree with was very interesting because I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go back home or go back to my room or anything. It didn't work like that. So you were sat there with these people where you definitely had different opinions, but you learn and you learn what they were interested in, and that has helped me enormously.
I think any modern politician can really learn from that message, mate, because what you've described there is quite a polarized situation that you found yourself in, but you then didn't close yourself off to those relationships. You listened, you adapted, and you got your own beliefs, sure, but at the same time, didn't mean you closed yourself off from those relationships. So full credit to you. So from being in a room where you've got gold plated AK-47s to the armory of Catterick, picking up an SA-80 to take that out in the range in your
Yeah.
combat infantryman's course. Let's bring you back down to earth now for a second. How did you find? I've been through that course myself. I've done combat infantryman's course at Catterick when I was 17. How did you find that going from that world to the new world of learning how to be an infanteer?
Do you know what the biggest kind of thing that I've learned from being in the infantry is that you just get on with the job. So you can complain about it, you can whinge about it, you can be upset about it, but you still got a job to go and do. And the quicker you realize that you just need to get it done, the easier your life is going to be. The interesting thing for me was because it was a reserve course, you got to meet all of these different people that were being melted into a pot in a very short period of time compared to regulars. I mean, I've just been to a rugby match with one of the people that I know from the Rifles Regiment, and I met him on that course. He's been one of my best friends since then, and he's from Birmingham. I never ever would have made friends with somebody from Birmingham, which is the UK's third city, as we all know. But he's a great person. I met him. I shared a basher with him on that course, and the team that we had, the section that I was in, were incredible, amazing people. But the thing that I'm going back to is that because we were reservists, I think sometimes the army, the infantry and the reserves is very different to the infantry and the regulars. So we got to meet in the food hall there 16, 15, 17-year-olds that were baby faced, fresh, didn't know what they were doing, and how they were treated versus how we were treated was very, very different because we had quite a few mature people. A lot of us were like late 20s, early 30s, and that level of maturity I think helps in a lot of different ways. But yeah, Catterick was very interesting, and we were there during a heat wave as well. So doing a section attack, which never seemed to stop during a heat wave, was fascinating. But I loved it. I loved it at the end. Didn't quite enjoy it so much when we were doing it, but to have done that from kind of where we were at the start and where we were afterwards, it was very interesting looking back and seeing how we all grew up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that background in the rural economy must have helped, right, from farming and just being used to being outdoors. But you're right. I think in the reserve forces, the level of, I think the training teams enjoy having reserve courses come through. And I've been an instructor at a depot and having taught phase two soldiers and officers going through their trade training, and and the level of maturity that you get and the different skills from their civilian backgrounds as well really shines through. And as an instructor, it's really enjoyable teaching reservists, in fact. So I can say that from this side of the fence, having been on your side of the fence too as a reservist and having gone through the infantry combat infantryman's course. So picking up from the end of that course, how's your reserve career panned out since?
So I it's just a really weird thing for me personally, but I always wanted to be an officer. That was like where I kind of started. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Wanted to do that for a long, long time. So I passed the first stage of my briefing, and I think the way it works from there is you've got 5 years where that's like in date to go and do your main board. I've still yet to go and do that, because basically, so I am transferring to a medical regiment because I want to go and be a combat medic. And I find I enjoy like being in the moment quite a lot. So I enjoy getting involved, doing stuff, reacting to different things. And the idea of turning up on the weekend to do more planning and more paperwork kind of doesn't appeal to me because in my day job, I have a lot of responsibility, and I do a lot of organizing and a lot of admin. So I don't know. At the moment, I'm kind of torn between two different pathways, which is officer, maybe stay infantry, or go on and be a medic and hopefully get attached back to an infantry unit or something. But I'm enjoying it. And like I said, I think the people in the reserves are very different to the regular army. And there's a different kind of, you get less time to do stuff. So yeah, on paper, 27 days a year, go and do a big 2 week exercise, and that's your lot, and you don't have to do anything more. But most of the people who are active and want to do stuff in the reserves do way, way more than that. But you're always at a disadvantage because you're having to learn more in less time than somebody in the regular army. And with that comes the equipment that you get to use, the grounds that you get to use, the opportunities that are available to you. So it's a challenge, it's harder, but if you want to do it and you're with a group of people that want to do it, it can be quite enjoyable. And that's the bit that I love, that you're with people that want to be there.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable assessment you've just made of the reserve forces writ large. But I think you're striking me as a type of person that's just going to grab any opportunity that comes your way. So whether that be as a medic or going for a commission, you've got a really good foundation there with the infantry that will set you up for life. And you got a bit of time to think about it. You're young, you can still, the world is your oyster. So I would just say, do what you've always been doing, which is taking opportunities that come your way. You don't need to tell me that. You've done it. You've proven that. And one such opportunity you've taken is working in politics. So you've done on both sides of the coin. You've become elected in local government, but also you have, working behind the scenes in politics. Tell us a little bit about how you transition from that world. You mentioned your farming background. You mentioned obviously being overseas as well, but that transition into working behind the scenes of politics, and what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah. So I think I kind of touched on it then, but there's this like ethos that I think a few people have, which is you just want to get stuff done, right? And I think the infantry is a big facilitator of that. And certainly in farming, when you're on your own and you've got to deal with certain situations, again, you just get it done. Um, Locally, there was quite a few things in my community that I felt weren't progressing, and I felt that actually, if it was me in that position, I'd make a different decision, and actually, I would get it done, I'd get it over the line, and I would kind of be this mediator between the community and the people that were making these decisions. So it was kind of out of frustration that I got into politics, and it's difficult. It's not as I think some people tend to dress local politics up as like Westminster, but miniature, and like you go into this debate hall and you can go and it's like PMQs or something every once a month, and it's just not that. A lot of what it is mediating between local communities, different community groups, and kind of expectation setting of what we can actually do. And local government is very tricky at the moment because there's no money. And it doesn't matter what team you're on, whether you're blue or red. It's very difficult to actually achieve things. And the fact is, people's expectations, as the situation has worsened, those expectations haven't kind of come down. People are still thinking local government does what it did in the 80s and before then, and it doesn't work that way anymore. So that's been incredibly challenging because, especially from my side, as a younger person, I think you want to go out and you want to change loads of things and you think you can just instantly make things better. And that is not possible. But the great thing about where I am in Bury is that we're in Greater Manchester and there's a lot of devolution. There's a lot of exciting things happening. The buses have just come back under public control. A lot of things that so personally, one of the things that I'm really interested in is veterans care. In Greater Manchester, we do a lot of that. We deliver a lot of that locally. So working with like the British Legion, but working with local GP practices, locality boards. So that ability to kind of shape things locally, I find really interesting, and we have done some of that. So in a way, I feel like I'm doing something that I'm interested in, and we're achieving things as well.
Awesome. And so yeah, you still remain idealistic, but also realistic. And I mean, Andy Burnham as the mayor up there has got not just a local profile but a national profile, and comes across really well as an effective communicator, and at times knows when to be non-partisan as well. I have to say, he plays a pretty good hand, but then can dial it up and be partisan when he needs to. I mean, what's he like? I've not met the guy, but as his reputation locally, and what's he like to work with?
He's a really nice guy. We've met him a lot, especially in the last couple of weeks with everything going on in Israel and Gaza, with the Jewish community that we serve, the Christian, the MP that I work for, that he serves. So he's a very nice guy. I'm not going to go into like his ambitions or anything because I can't speak for him. But I think if you look at his record, the last election that he had, every single ward in Greater Manchester voted for him. Not many politicians can say that. So he's obviously got a lot that he can point to. The buses recently is quite a big achievement since I think it was 1986, the last time they were under public control in Manchester. So that's a bit of an experiment. Greater Manchester de-evolution is an experiment. My frustration, I think, and I don't know, maybe I think Andy has said the same, but the government and the way it hands out power to local authorities and regions, it's bespoke in every case. So there isn't like a standard model, which I think is annoying. The West Midlands is very different to the Northeast and Greater Manchester. But he's a great guy. There's a lot of character to him, and obviously what he wants to do. But very not quiet, but very kind of. He always listens. Like you get the sense that when you speak to him, he's actively listening to what you're saying. He doesn't speak down to people, from my experience. and he is interested. He really is interested in trying to make things different in Greater Manchester, at least. And then working for an MP in Greater Manchester is a different kind of layer of that as well. Because whilst we do have de-evolution and things are very different, and again, whether it's the blue or red team, you've got the party line and what that party wants to achieve. And it's like there's lots of different layers to politics within Greater Manchester, I find.
Yeah, and you mentioned you work for an MP, and that's Christian Wakeford. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been on his own journey, of course, having been a Conservative and then defected to the Labour Party. What's it like working for an MP?
Fantastic. I mean, I absolutely love it. I think sometimes there's there's a few people who maybe think they're in the West Wing or the thick of it or something like that. You get the occasional person that'll call themselves chief of staff of three people or whatever. I'm sure you've met people like that. But I'm very happy with chief brewmaker or just general schlepper. But I think so. We have casework, which is like the normal stuff with the constituencies. There's some policy that comes into it from our side as well. And there's obviously kind of things that we react to. For example, the recent situation in Israel and Gaza with the communities that we serve. But yeah, I think what he did was very, very tough. I think you've nailed your colours to the mast at that point, haven't you? So I don't think anyone can lecture you about loyalty or courage or anything that. So I think some people try and say that he was perhaps doing it to save his own neck. Well, the fire that you go through and the melting pot that you go through in that whole process, I think you're pretty clear at the end of it about what you want to do and what you're trying to achieve. I think he's demonstrated that. He's been appointed as an opposition whip, which is a huge, I suppose, amount of trust from the party and a reward in terms of they think he's doing the right thing and they think that he behaves in the right way. And I certainly think, as a person working for him, although I obviously would say this, that he is a good MP, somebody who has the right kind of character and ambitions. He treats people in the sort of way that you'd want to be treated, and he's a great guy. He works very hard. My issue with him is that he probably doesn't tell people how hard he actually works. He's a very quiet person. I won't go on about it too much, but yeah, I'm really enjoying working for him and learning a lot as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it'll at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the electorate to decide what they think about that whole matter anyway. Not for me to comment, or for you, but it's great to hear that you've got a great experience working in politics as well. And I mean, you mentioned you're a younger person working in politics and in elected office. Do you think what do young people say and your friends in normal life, or even your friends in the reserve forces, when you mention the political stuff? How do people react to that as a younger person? Do they think that's normal? Do they think, are they inquisitive?
I think generally the word that they use is mad. They find it crazy that someone would want to do that, and crazy that a young person actually does that in the first place. I think there's an idea that it's a bunch of like old cronies, which is, I mean, Westminster. I don't know what Westminster would do if there wasn't young, ambitious 20-year-olds wanting to do something, because that is the whole of the staffers in Westminster. But in the constituency office, it's not like that at all. You're dealing with normal people who've got normal concerns. A lot of it actually relates to local government in many cases. But I think politics it's never probably been a worse time to get involved. I think people's dissatisfaction for various reasons, and it's not just the last kind of 13 years. It's all sorts. It's not nailed to party colours either. I think people have an idea of what an MP is. They have an idea of what a local councillor is, and it's very, very hard to dissuade people from that stereotype sometimes. And also, there's a huge misunderstanding of what local government actually is, as I was saying before, what local government can do, but also about what the national government can do. In some cases, people don't think it can do stuff that it can do, and in some cases, people think it can do stuff that it can't. So it works both ways. But younger people, I think, I did a talk at my old college. The politics teacher there invited me in, and there's probably about 40 people on that course. And I asked the question. I said, "Who wants to? Who would be interested in getting involved in politics?" And 5 people put their hands up. And out of that, I said, "Well, how many people would consider being an MP?" And only 2 of them put their hands up. That's pretty scary because the thing is, you want good people to go into politics. You want the right sort of people to be there. You don't want the people that think they can get something out of it personally. You want people there who can serve the general public, who want to do it for the right reasons. And if the people that don't want to do it for the right reasons aren't there, then in my eyes, the people who want to do it for the wrong reasons will fill that gap. And that isn't a winning situation for anybody.
Do you know what though? I bet if you asked that question at the beginning and at the end of your talk, you would have got two different responses because you've got a really good balance of being, quite aspirational, but also quite realistic. And that's quite a difficult line to walk in terms of not wanting to inspire people into it and not wanting to put them off. So I reckon you probably more hands would have gone up at the end, having heard you speak, because you speak really well about politics in a realistic way, but at the same time can enthuse. And I think you should do more of that, quite frankly. I'm also going to speak at I'm going to be a judge on a debating competition, a schools debating competition for an MP in Northampton, which I'm really excited about. I was humbled to be asked to go along and be a judge. And I'm going to be really interested to see the younger people's response, not just in terms of their skill set to be able to converse and communicate, but their response to want to represent their communities because they are the future. They really are. It's true. And I wanted to give you a voice today because this podcast, yes, we have lots of veterans and politically minded, but I hope younger people will listen to this episode too and think, do you know what? Why not me as a younger person? Why not me work for an MP? Why not me join the reserves? And why not me represent my community? Because we need all sorts. We have seen, of course, the youngest MP recently elected in that by-election from the Labour Party. I mean, it was 22, I think, got elected.
Yeah, it's a Keir and another Keir as well, obviously.
Another Keir.
Yeah, the Babby. So this kind of came out, didn't it? They were, as when he got sworn in, everyone was kind of saying, "Well, he's too young to have any life experience and all this kind of stuff." But like realistically, what is life experience? If he's took every opportunity that he can get and he's gone out and done whatever he wants to do, whether that's work or personal life, it's traveling abroad, seeing different cultures, meeting different people, then fair play to him. He has the passion and the want to actually serve people in that community. And I think that is actually worth more than just having been alive a little bit longer. So it was really weird to see people kind of negative that a young person was being elected. And also, I mean, it's harder to do things that I think older people did a lot easier back in the day, like buy a house or just get the train down to London in some cases. But I think he's fantastic. He's got the energy to do it. And if you want people who want to be there, then that's fantastic. If you don't want people who want to be there and you just want somebody that's going to hang on and be a bit of a passenger, then okay. But I think you're going to be in the minority.
And to be fair, we know people that in their 50s that still live at home with their mum. So what have they done? Perhaps in terms of life experience. So it takes all sorts is probably what I'm trying to say. And we know some of the great leaders throughout history have been relatively young, and we've had young generations stand up to the call, whether it be World War One or the perceived PlayStation generation that stood up to international terrorism during the Iraq and Afghan years as well. So young people can do great things. You're right. We should take it at face value and not just automatically dismiss people for being young. I will probably confess I was a little bit skeptical when I heard how young Keir was getting elected. But give him a chance. Just give him a chance to prove what he can do. And it doesn't matter what I think. It's what the electorate thinks, and the electorate decided that they want him. So we should respect that and respect democracy when it comes down to it. Wow. Well, what next for you? Because you've done a lot already, both academically, both in terms of your military career, and you've got some other aspirations around that, local government, working for an MP. What does the future hold for you?
I think going back to what I said before, but I have absolutely no shame in saying that I'd love to be an MP somewhere, and eventually do that. But I am very aware that I am quite young and I've got 4 years as a local council where I can learn a lot from the people around me, and hopefully do a lot for the community that I serve as well. So that is a priority at the moment, doing that, learning. I'm not sure what's going to happen with my army career. Hopefully that progresses. And if it is the kind of combat medic route that I want to go down, there's an awful lot to learn there. Um, I think you said it earlier, but just taking every opportunity that I get, whether that's listening to people, whether that's engaging, going on courses, upskilling myself in the reserves, traveling, or even just kind of learning things within my own party and from politicians on this side, and everywhere, to be fair. But I think the one thing that you said it a couple of times, but just being realistic, and not, I'm not involved in politics because I think I want to go on and be like the future prime minister or something. I'm involved in politics because I want to see things change, and I actually want to see things get better, not worse. And for me, that will always be okay. Well, if there's an option to better whatever we're doing or improve it, whether that's a more efficient service, whether that's getting more people on board, then I will continue to do that. And that's something that I'm excited about, getting more people involved into this crazy experiment that we have, which is called democracy at every level.
Crazy experiment called democracy. I love that. And before we close out, mate, it'd be really interesting to know about how people can sort of follow you. If there's also an opportunity, shout out for any of the kind of community campaigns or any of the pet projects that you're interested in. We'll put those in the show notes below. But anything else that you'd like to kind of get a bit of a shout out for where you've got this opportunity?
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter, which is Gareth_SJ, or just on Facebook, Councillor Gareth Staples Jones. I did just kind of want to put a bit of a shout out mainly to British Legion branches, because I'm a Legion member in my own community and I'm organising the Remembrance Parade that we've got coming up on the 12th. The other thing that I wanted to say was, so at my university, just very briefly, there were two people that I met. A guy called Paul Watson, who's now an independent councillor. You may know him. He used to be
whose interview will be alongside yours, mate, in the season.
fantastic. So he was one of the people that really kept me grounded, and he's one of my best friends. Has inspired me an enormous amount. And one of the people that we knew at university was a chap called Chris Butcher, who unfortunately took his own life. But those two gentlemen had a huge, huge impact on me, the way that I see our world, and the way that I think we have a duty to veterans in this country that we're not currently fulfilling. So that's all I'll say in terms of shout outs, but they were two fantastic people. And I'm very grateful to everything they've taught me. And I'm very grateful you've had me on here and interviewed me and given me some time to talk about my relatively young self. So thank you very much, mate. I appreciate that.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. We will put links to the Royal British Legion as ever, who I'm a huge fan of, having been a beneficiary via the Invictus movement and the RBL. We'll put those in the show notes. And it's also fantastic that we're featuring Paul's story alongside yours. It is a fantastic listen, I have to say. So we'll make sure that your two stories will be close together in the release date of these podcasts. And I just really want to say, well done, mate. Your story, you've inspired me today. Your approach, I think you're going about things the right way. And for any person, whether that be young or old, reservist or regular, local government or parliament, I hope you found this useful because this will inspire you to stand up and serve again. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks to our guests and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, hit subscribe now. Alternatively, you can support our mission by checking out in the show notes below where you can rate, donate, or become our mate. Thank you.